Pasha Shoftim. This Pasha, I'm sure started learning it. Shoftim is Shoftim, that is, you have to appoint judges and officers and a whole system of judges and further other mitzvahs. There's one very unique thing about this Pasha, that of all the Pashas in the Torah, the Rebbe explains that all the Pashas in the Torah are a unit, and they're all related to the beginning, to the name of the Pasha. But usually, in most cases, you have to dig and figure out how they're united, how they're related. And this Pasha, the whole Pasha, clearly speaks about one theme. You got it? It begins with Shoftim. You have to appoint judges who should judge the people. And then it goes into the mitzvah of a melech, of appointing a king. And then it goes into the mitzvah of listening to a novi. Then it goes into the mitzvah of how you go out to war. The whole Pasha is really one single theme. And I want to try and elaborate on several of these specifically. The first is the principle of appointing judges. At first glance, when you say we have judges and we have officers, that seems to be implying that there are things which are inappropriate, which people can do wrong. You have to keep them in line. They shouldn't do wrong, shouldn't fly off. That's why you need judges. Otherwise it becomes a free-for-all, becomes hefker, an open an uncontrolled society, and people go into all kinds of inappropriate activities, criminal activities, and so forth. But in truth, when we go a little deeper into the principle of appointing of judges, and particularly when we translate this mitzvah as it applies to every individual, because just as in a society, just as in a country, there has to be order, there has to be a judge and an officer, a judge who presents the law and says how things should run, and an officer who enforces it. The same is true within every individual. The Alter Rebbe explains, you surely learned, that every individual person is a whole world. And a whole world, we mean literally, has every aspect of the world. And thus a person has a tendency to go in every opposite direction. He encompasses the whole world. He encompasses the whole world.
I don't understand this comparison yet. Confusing.
Listen a little more. So, the principle of judges and officers, which sets a path and a limit on people's activities. As a matter of fact, the Torah itself is referred to as a derech, a pathway, a roadway. The concept of a roadway, a pathway, in contrast to an open field, an open land, where you can go any which way you want. And here we're saying, no, we're not going any which way we want, we have a specific pathway. This pathway seems to put some kind of a limit on the person, some kind of a burden. Watch out! Don't go where you don't belong. You don't belong in the whole world. You belong only on this little path. This is in fact the conflict that exists in the person. That he realizes there is a right and a wrong, and he has to follow a certain path. And on the other hand, there is a tendency, the Yetzer Hara, or whatever it is, the Behemoth, says, why should you be restrained? You will be a part of the world. You should be open to anything you want. When you're limiting yourself to a path, you're actually taking yourself out of the whole world, and you're creating yourself a little narrow path. So this is sort of an imposed limit on a person that in effect makes the person smaller and takes away his relationship to the open and big world. So we need to focus in and reflect and understand. Just as in the society in general, even in the secular society, everyone understands that there has to be a system of judges. Why? Not because they like to be limited. On the contrary, they want to live in the whole country. And in order to live in the whole country, you have to have a path. You have to have a method how things occur. And if you don't have a method, and you want just free, open spaces, then you have nothing. Not that you have open space, you have nothing. The only way to benefit from the whole world and from all the open spaces is by charting it and by setting a path. That's the way you can benefit from the whole world. In our days, to me, this is like our days. To you, this is from the beginning of time. We have airplanes flying in the air. Airplanes flying in the air really have almost unlimited possibilities. When you're on Earth, at least you can take the different routes, but you can't go up and down. You're limited. You have a flat surface on which you can maneuver. Airplanes in the air have no limit. So you would think, great, we'll give the pilot and say, okay, go over there, go whichever way you want. Open world. So people in their wisdom realized that's not going to work. And we have the airspace charted. The airspace is actually charted with highways similar to the highways we have on Earth. And the address of these highways, of course, is a little bit differently referred to. It's referred to in terms of longitude and altitude and all that, but there are specific locations. And every pilot, before he gets into the cockpit, is given a route, how he's going to go. So the only way to benefit of all the greatness that we have in the world is by following a charted path. And clearly this is true in an individual person. We have, each one of us has a neshama. The neshama is infinitely great. And the neshama recognizes the greatness of Hashem and the greatness of life. And the only way to utilize that greatness that the neshama gives us, the only way that we can relate to the neshama, to its greatness, is by following a path. Shoftim v'shoftim titu l'chol b'chol she'orech. We have to judge every step and chart out our paths.
Is it really the nature of a Jew to go completely off the path if he doesn't have any guidance?
Well, the nature of the Yetzer Hara is to be unguarded. He refuses to be guarded. He's a wild animal. You can train him and all that, but in nature, that's what it is. We have to employ our intellect and wisdom to explain to the Yetzer Hara, to the Nefesh Abamis, and to keep in guard. But even after the explanation, you have to keep in guard. That's why you have two things. You have Shoftim v'Shoftim. You have judges and officers. So keep guard.
These guards.
No,
These guards are used to prevent and the set of laws used to prevent anarchy and chaos.
Mm-hmm. To take a simple analogy, and to bring this discussion to, so to speak, to a clear focus. We have open fields, the whole world, and then we also build houses, and we live in small houses, each one in their individual houses. And we have, God forbid, people who remain homeless and live in the street. So the people that live in the street, they live in their big world. People who live in a home live in a small enclosed area. Now we have to ask ourselves the question, who really lives in the world? Those who live in the street or those who live in the enclosed area? Who is really participating and getting benefit from the whole world? Clearly it's the one who lives in an enclosed area. So by being in an enclosed area, this is how we capture and we benefit from the goodness that the whole world has. And thus, the Torah says, Shoftim v'Shoftim titan lecho. And each individual person has to have a judge his mind and be on guard of how he follows his path. And he should not think for a moment that this is in fact limiting him, because into the contrary, the truth is that this is what opens him and gives him the opportunity to benefit from all the greatness that there is. I will skip to almost to the end of the parsha and then go back to the Indian from Novi, which I want to elaborate a little more. At the end of the parsha, the Torah gives us the outline how the Jewish people go out to war. That when we go out to war, the Kohen stands up in front of the people and he makes several announcements. And the first announcement is that you must let you know that you're going to a war upon your enemies, and you must not fear. You must not fear. Why? Because Hashem is going with you. And therefore you must not fear. And then the Kohen says several other things, that people who have certain things left behind, they should go back because it's too painful, and if they miss out on it, they build a house, they just got married, and certain other things. And then an officer gets up and he makes an announcement and he says any person who still has fear in his heart should go back, so that he does not infect others with the same fear. And then they appoint officers that will lead the people to war. The whole principle of warfare, the whole idea of warfare, although it turns out that throughout history, Jewish history, it was a necessity. But the whole thing of warfare, it's difficult to understand. We see it even today. Can you imagine a soldier on the front? He's standing there, exposed to enemy fire. He's looking around, and he sees an enemy pointing a gun at him. Pointing a gun at him. And he, at that moment, has to have the presence of mind and the strength of character to stand up, take his rifle, and aim it at his enemy. And you can't aim with closed eyes. You have to aim with open eyes. You have to aim very carefully, because if you don't aim carefully, you're going to miss it. In other words, even though he is now being a target of an enemy, he has to have full presence of mind and stand there as if he's just shooting at a target, and put his aim very clearly, very correctly at the target, and shoot in the face of the fact that he is being shot at. So this, if we project the experience of it, seems to be almost an impossible task. Even if a person does not run away, but he panics when he's in such a situation. How he can stand and face this fire and do his work with intelligence and care? It seems almost impossible. So someone once said to me, you know what? You know why he's doing it? Because he sees that he is going to be shot at. And for self-protection, he takes his gun and he aims it in order to protect himself. So I explained to him that if the soldier at this moment feels the fear of being shot at, and he is doing it in self-protection, he will never be able to do it right. He'll be in such a state of panic. A soldier who stands and executes his duties in fear of being hit, of being shot at, that soldier, God forbid, has very little chance of coming back. He doesn't have the character and the strength to do this job. He has to do the job concentrating completely on what he has to do, not in self-protection. He has to do the job that he's told to do. Fully dedicated and concentrated on that job. It's the only way, the only chance for him to survive the war is if he does it this way. Otherwise, he is doomed. Now the question is, how is it possible? Where does he get that strength? The answer is, he gets that strength because he recognizes that he's not fighting for himself. He's not fighting for self-protection. He's fighting for his country. So he is at this moment representing the whole country. And the person who is shooting at him is not shooting at him, he's shooting at his country. He has the strength that goes beyond an individual person. He's representative of the whole nation. And because he's representative of the whole nation, this gives him completely different strength, different power. And this is how he is able to face the enemy and go through and do his thing. And this is reflected in today's parsha. The Kohen gets up to the people and says, don't be afraid. So the people would answer him, easier said than done. It's easy to say, don't be afraid. But how do you eliminate fear? You're going to fight a war? The answer is that you are fighting Hashem's war. And that gives you a completely different approach, different strength. That brings out in a person strength of his neshama that he doesn't know under normal circumstances.
I'm sorry, but how do we see in this the idea, you said that in the taken of this week's parsha is openly visible in the name of the parsha.
Yeah.
But what does the union of this war have to do with Shoftim?
War is under the circumstances when certain rules are being violated. What's war? When your Shoftim, your organization, your principles are being violated. So you go out to war. It is the shofet essentially who sends you to war.
So the catalyst of wars are by principles that are violated?
Yeah. wanted to point out in this context that we all know how successful the shluchim of the Rebbe are in throughout the world in the war against assimilation and the war against ignorance and the war of bringing Eden back to Yiddishkeit. And this is really an amazing thing because we have thousands of shluchim who have built empires, and these are simple guys. These are not people who had any special training, who have special talent, who are great speakers, scholars, any kind of outstanding quality would say, oh, this explains how come he was successful. They're run-of-the-mill people. Every bocha from 770 aspires to be a shliach. And in most instances he succeeds. He goes out and finds some kind of shlichus, and he turns his town upside down. How is this? It is because he does not come with his own strength. Because he comes as shliach from Rebbe. And as such, all his inner strength that they contained in his neshama come right out. In addition to the fact that he has the bracha from Rebbe and assistance. But just the strength with which he comes is unusual. I know a shliach happened to be my son-in-law in Montreal. He needed certain permission to build, and in that city they are extremely difficult to grant this permission. Very restrictive, and for years he couldn't break it through, and he needed it. So finally he made an appointment with the whatever, that city council. He came in with a big picture of the Rebbe, and he said, you should know that I'm working for this man. And I need this permit. Just like that. I think I need it for me. I'm working for this man, and I need this permit. And he got it. We have to know, we spoke about Shoftim on ourselves, we have to know that each one of us has a shlichus. We're not working for ourselves to be better people, to be successful people. We are working to fulfill God's mission. And God gave us the Torah. The Torah was given to the Jewish people to illuminate the whole world, bring light and goodness and godliness to the whole world, to everyone, to Yidden and Lahadl to Goy. And that's the mission we are carrying, and this is our strength with which we carry it through.
So we're working to illuminate the world through Torah and mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm. And now I want to go back and speak on a certain part of this parsha, which I feel is important for us to reflect on. This is a little bit in the middle. You didn't get to it yet this year. Maybe last year you got to it. This is the Pasha of a Nevius, of a Novi. So first Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Yidden that they must not follow the ways of the Goyim who seek out the information from sorcerers and mechashefim and magicians, or whatever their sources are. And he says to them, he even says to us, do not seek to know information and the future from these sources. You have to stick with God. You have to be one with Hashem. How are you going to be with Hashem? Tomim tiyeh. The Pasuk says, Tomim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. So Rashi explains that this means you have to be a tomim. You have to be whole. You have to be trusting, not fearful, not suspicious. You have to be simply trusting and not be concerned and worried about the future. This is how you're going to be with Hashem. Because in fact, Hashem is with us all the time. Just as Hashem is with us now, the same Hashem is going to be with us tomorrow. And He's going to lead us and provide for us whatever we need tomorrow, just as He provided for us for today. That's what He told me. You don't have to be concerned about the next day, the future. And this is the only way. This is the only way to be connected, to live, so to speak, with Hashem. To live your life with the presence, with the consciousness of Hashem's presence. This goes back to the beginning, where the Torah speaks about Yankiv and Esau. Yankiv and Esau were twins, I'm sure you know. And they were very, very different people. Esau, from early childhood on, was already a conniving person. What conniving means? Conniving, tricky, looking for ways to get his way. Fighting, getting people, tricking people out, getting their properties. By Yankiv it says, Yankiv ish tom, Yeshua Holy. Yankiv was a tom, like Tommy. He was a whole person, a wholesome person, a trusting person.
Who?
Yankiv.
Yaakov?
Mm-hmm. Yeshua Holy, he sat in tents, which means he sat in yeshiva and learned. That's what it means. That was Yankiv. Because Yankiv was Tom, Yankiv, by him, as far as he's concerned, he is not interested in the world. He's interested in the creator of the world, in Hashem who creates the world. And this is what he lives with. And as we all know, that in the long run, Yankiv created a huge nation, and Esau was a nothing. No comparison between Yankiv's accomplishment and Esau's accomplishment. Yankiv. Esau.
Edom.
Nothing compared to the Jewish nation. Even in terms of numbers. When Yankiv came to Mitzrayim, Yankiv was 70, precious. And Esau moved out from Canaan into Had Eden, he had 7. It was a completely different thing. Esau was busy with different things. He was busy fighting with all around the world. By Yankiv, this was a single nation. By Esau, these were all separate, different entities, all going their own way. Immediately after that, the Torah says that as the nations are seeking out information from the sorcerers, you must not follow this way. Instead, you're going to have a Novi. Novi mikir b'chom ya'achechu komeini. A Novi from amongst yourselves, of your brothers, like myself. Moshe Rabbeinu talk points to himself. Hashem will appoint for you, and he is the one that you should listen to. And if you need to know anything, go to the Novi. So here we have an interesting thing, and the Rebbe points out in the Sikha, an interesting thing. Here the Torah seems to be saying, do not seek to know the future. Live trusting and live in the present, and it will carry you through. And immediately after the Pasuk says, instead of the Koisim, you should go to the Novi. So you should be interested to know what the future holds. Sure as the Novi. That seems to be contradictory to the other principle. What do we need a Novi for? We'll wait until it happens. So here is where we get the real insight, the real principle of this whole teaching here. Like we spoke about before about when going to war. When we go to war, we don't represent ourselves, we represent our mission. The same is true in this principle of Tomim Tiyeh, you should be whole and trusting. That is based on the principle that we all have a mission, we all have a destiny. When a person goes to a sorcerer and looking to get to know the future, he's not concerned about his destiny, he's not concerned about fulfilling his mission. He's concerned about himself. He's into himself. He wants to know what's going to happen, how to do things, just for his own success. It's devoid of any meaning, of any purpose. That the Torah says this is contrary to Yiddishkeit, contrary to Jewish belief, contrary to Avodas Hashem. When a person goes to a Novi, in order to know how to fulfill Hashem's will, what does Hashem want at this particular juncture, to get his mission paper, so to speak, that is entirely appropriate. So that this is what the Torah is telling us. Under all circumstances, a Yid is a Tomim, he is whole with Hashem. And he has no concerns about himself. He is constantly, all the time, on the front lines, fulfilling his mission, fulfilling his duties. And that's why he's Tomim. He sits, complete complacency, he knows what he has to do. If a Novi comes to him and he says to him, we have to now go do such and such, then he picks up and does it. He knows what to do from a Novi. Why? Not because this is good for him, but because this is his mission papers. This is what directs him in his life, what to do in terms of Avodas Hashem. So this whole discussion that we had today, both speaking about the beginning of the Parsha, the end of the Parsha, and the middle of the Parsha, all of this is giving us a sense of a greater presence, of a greater truth, of a greater presence that we are representing. Just like we spoke about the Shoftim, that one is a Shoter, even though that creates some kind of a limit on you. But this limit is the means by which you can relate to the whole thing. And if you don't have a limit, then you have nothing. The same is true in the union of Tmimus, of being trusting, of being with Hashem. Does not mean that you are refraining, you're closing yourself off from what's going on and blindly just sitting in your tent and doing your thing. On the contrary, it means that you recognize an overall purpose. You recognize how you related and how you're fulfilling a mission for the whole world and for Hashem. But in order to fulfill that mission, you have to stay in line. And if you don't stay in line, if you say, I'll be in the open field, then nothing occurs. Nothing is fulfilled. And the same thing, the soldier on the front lines, the only way he can face the enemy and do his duty is by continually relating to the people that sent him and the nation that he's protecting. And therefore, when we come back to ourselves over here, and we're reflecting what we are doing, we've had, during different moments, different circumstances, we have sometimes a student come from a faraway land, from South America, from Africa, from whatever it is. He comes to yeshiva for a few years. He absorbs whatever he can absorb in Torah. And he says clearly the purpose of his coming here is not to make himself a Fumari, but to go back to his old country and to bring his whole community with him, to teach and to bring life to the whole community. Every one of us, right now, we're all concerned about our own accomplishments, our own successes, that we should do well in our classes and absorb as much knowledge as we can and so forth. But we have to understand and know that each one of us is literally a soldier in Hashem's army. Regardless of what we do, whether you become a shliach or a business person or a professional, a yid who learned in yeshiva, particularly a yid who learned in the Rebbe's yeshiva, in Tefet Mimim, learned Chassidus, knows that he has to be imparting, he has to illuminate the rest of the world. He has to know it all the time. Because the power, the light, the insight that we accomplish, that we absorb, that we get here, with all the frustrations that we have, I don't understand, I don't know, I can't relate to it, all of those frustrations, there's no comparison to the darkness that the whole world is walking in. And a yid who learned in yeshiva, who learned Chassidus, comes out to the world. He just brings brightness into them. I had a very interesting experience myself. I can never understand it. I was in this office, and there were several people there, happened to be Israelis. Israelis are those who are not frum. It's very difficult to break through. They are pretty stubborn. So when I came to this office, everybody knew I'm a Lubavitcher. So they came joking at me, okay, let's see if you can get these people to put on film. They all tried for all years, and they kind of were teasing me. Let's see if you can get them to put on film. Okay? So, it didn't take long. I went down to the basement wherever their offices are, and I talked to them, said hello, and so forth. Anyway, within 2 days, they were back in my office putting on film. And these other people, the teasers, one time come into my office, they see these people standing over there, with film. What happened? How did you do that? We have a completely different strength. I mean, that's I saw with my own eyes. For years they were talking to them about film. Nothing happens. Came a Lubavitcher and offered them to put on film, and in 2 days they were putting on film. One of them, actually, a younger one, I made a shir with them, I learned with him, I made a shir with them. This whole Kriyas Yamsuf had melted away. Because Chassidus, I can learn. Chassidus is not a superficial learning. Every word that we learn at Chassidus opens up a window into the neshama, into the nefesh, into the soul. And then, when you think, you're not even aware of it. But your whole understanding of Torah, your whole understanding of Yiddishkeit, understanding of the world is completely different. There's a certain truth, a certain reality to it. Because the neshama gets touched. It's not understood, it's not being viewed from outside, from externally, but from internal. And you can be a tomim, you can be completely trusting and innocent and almost naive, and turn the world upside down. Because when you come and you speak with Amunah, you come and speak with representing the truth, not just yourself. It's completely different. You're a real soldier. So this is the message of the Pasha. We have to know. Don't feel restrained when you have to put limits on yourself. Shoftim b'shoftim, because this is the only way to get and to relate to the whole truth and to the Medrash and to Torah. This does not limit you; it makes you infinitely greater. And the strength that you accumulate, that you get from that, with this strength, you can be a tomim, and then ultimately you can go to war and be matzliach. Build your own homes and illuminate the whole world. And so, this is our closing wish and bracha to everyone, that we should all be matzliach over here and absorb as much as we possibly can, deeper and deeper into our mind, into our souls, so that we have a little spark of life in us. With this spark of life, we can go and illuminate the whole world. And Mitzvah Shem bring Mashiach for everyone.